Now, my original interest in Dustborn was first piqued and immediately shattered when its first original trailer was displayed. I forget which conference it was, but they brought it up on the screen and it had this comic book look with these weird looking characters, but it looked like it could be interesting until I paid a bit more attention and realized they were talking about how words have power. And I looked at one of the characters, and there were this overweight character with the big glasses and that vitiligo skin condition. And I was like, okay, all right. I can tell what type of game this is going to be. So at that point, I lost interest. However, my interest was reignited when the controversy around this game came up again. And I was very intrigued to see what type of game this was. Because, I like two types of games. I like games that are really good, and I like games that are really bad. I can have fun with both of those things, and it's entertaining to engage with both sides. My issue is with these run of the mill mediocre games like The First Descendant. I have no interest in that kind of stuff. I usually lose interest in those ones relatively quickly because there isn't really much to talk about. They're just fine. Now, when it came to this game, I watched a bunch of people stream it because, of course, I wasn't going to try this out myself. Why would I, right? It looked terrible. But I noticed that every single person that was streaming the game seemed to almost be trolling. Almost like they've already decided. I mean, because, of course, it doesn't have the best of circumstances. It's 2024, and a lot of DEI stuff is taking a lot of L's. So obviously this game was not coming in at the right time, and it was going to be shut on no matter what. But most of the people that I saw streaming the game, they seem to be like trolling. They were not hitting the notes correctly because this game has like a musical component to it. They were choosing the worst pieces of dialogue and always almost like trying to show how terrible the characters are. When it came to hitting the musical notes, they're doing it badly, and then at the end they get like a result where that officer talks about how people don't like politics in their entertainment. I'm sure you've seen that clip around.
Whatever. You may want to pick a different song next time. Folks in the Republic don't much like politics with their entertainment.
And people are like, what? What a weird woke thing to say. And I'm like, I feel like this is a punishment for you performing poorly. That's why the person's saying this. They're just telling you that your performance is bad. I don't think it's meant to be like a woke thing. And I guess that's where where we're in the culture war. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether something is just naturally like that or if it has some kind of sinister motivations. I get it.
That was great. You guys are so good. I especially like the part about being outcasts. I actually often feel that way myself. People passing through here see the uniform, but not the person inside the uniform, What's the name of your band?
The other one that's popular is the one where you are facing off against the Justice Patrol officers, who are the racists inside that bar. They're a bunch of they're saying a lot of racist shit. And you have the opportunity to either use your trigger ability to say, and then Pax shouts you are racist, or you can not do that. But almost every single person I've seen play that scene goes with the trigger option.
Fella you're with, the black kid? Dresses like a writer? Does he know anything?
You are racist.
So I decided to try that same scene, but not do that. Don't use the trigger option. Try and look for an alternative way to end it. And yeah, you can end it a lot more peacefully. They actually even end up if you don't do anything, right? Like you don't do anything crazy. Norm will come and pacify them, and it's still not a nice encounter, but it doesn't end up with the characters either shooting themselves or the police being called or some kind of negative outcome. They actually buy your characters a bunch of food, and then your characters can sit down and basically have their meal and then continue. There are ways to de-escalate these situations. They are not always they are not always the worst versions that we see online. So I said, you know what? I'll take it upon myself. I will try and find the value in this game. I will try and create like a pacifist run where you do not try to cause unnecessary conflict. You try and play all the music correctly, and I will be the one to find the value in the game.
Sheer fucking hubris.
Now, did I find anything positive about the game? Yeah, actually I did. Two things primarily. One subjective, one I think is objective. The subjective one is I like this comic book look, the art style. It's ruined a bit by its animations, but I'm on the positive side right now, so I'm going to focus. I think the artistic direction is pretty cool. It's clear they're on a low budget. They went for the comic book look. There's also these panels at the beginning of every chapter, every act. I think they call them acts in this game. And I think those look really beautiful. Most of them, they have like really nice drawings, especially the cover art. And as someone who grew up with, comic book reading as part of my life, those are really, really cool to look at. The second thing that I think is more objective is the relationship mechanic in this game. This is one of the games where you have to pay attention to what your party says, because there is a gift-giving mechanic that moves their different personalities one way or another. And each of the characters has like 3 mental states. So you can manipulate these either using dialogue or gifts or certain, moments where you get to do one thing or another. And these characters' relationships are not just positive, negative, approved or disapproved or stuff like that. They actually determine your real options when you're out on mission, right? Like you get to certain scenarios and what you can and cannot do within that scenario will be determined by your character's current mental state. There is a point at which you're at a gas station and you're trying to get some alcohol in order to start a fire and someone, a biker gang. Now, the options you have right there are determined by your character's mental states. There's a door in the back that you can open to access a back-end garage. To do that, Theo's mental state will determine whether that option is available to you or not. If you get in, there's a car that you can hotwire. Whether or not you can hotwire that car will be determined by Ziggy's mental state.
You kept the trucks in Liberty running. Can you help me figure out why this one doesn't start?
What's the point? That useless old wreck is never getting us out of here, so whatever.
And, there's stuff like that all around. Sai also opens for you a number of things, and that is also determined by Sai's mental state. So you actually have to pay attention. And sometimes, if you just give out gifts however you want, you can actually piss the characters off. If you give them like the wrong thing, there's a point at which I gave Sai a gift that she had given to me in a previous cutscene because I was kind of zoning out. And I actually got a very negative output because she was like, wait, are you giving me something that I gave to you? And I had to quickly Alt F4 out of the game to make sure that in order to maintain my positive run, I had to Alt F4 quickly and basically cheat the game in order not to lock in that negative choice. I think this mechanic is pretty cool. If these people are to receive more taxpayer money and continue making these games, I think that is a mechanic they should just double down on and improve and make even better. Because I think that's a genuinely interesting mechanic that, like, no shade, I think that's pretty good. The third and final thing is that the game is technically good. What I mean is that, you're not facing frame rate drops. I wasn't facing, like, game crashes. It's a stable game. It works well. I didn't face any of those kinds of issues. It could just be because of my setup. But I mean, with PC nowadays, if you get that kind of experience, you have to praise it. No matter who it's coming from, if the game is stable, you have to acknowledge that and respect it, which I do with this one. Now, unfortunately, that's where the positives really ended. I wasn't able to find anything else. The rest of this is the negative stuff, which I'm assuming you're watching the video for. The first issue with this game that it cannot rise above is the characters. These characters are really, really unlikable. Like, I'm pretty sure the people who made them thought that they were likable, but This is it's one of those misreads that I keep talking about, where you kind of misread the tea leaves.
Even though we're on the run and dealing with a lot right now, I'm glad I'm here with y'all.
What's going on? Are you dying?
Yeah, you're acting very weird, Pax.
Just feeling grateful.
That's nice.
Shut up,
Shut up, Theo.
These characters are pretty abhorrent people. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'll go through the main characters, right? There is Gnome, who I really dislike. They seem to think that Gnome is like suave and like charming. I don't know why. The reason I say that is because Gnome is given like a lot of like sexual jokes and innuendos all the time. They seem to think that the character is really hilarious or like really cool or something. I don't know what it is. There's just I find this character really really grating, and later on when their story begins to open up a little bit, there's at least some more depth to them. But up until that point, yeah, I'm not a fan of them at all. Sai is like a mental breakdown just about to happen at all times.
You know what? I'm letting this thing drive itself from now on. In fact, I'm never driving again. I'm done. Done.
Auto drive engaged.
What? What do you want from me, huh? I told you, I'm not going anywhere. I'll just be risking everyone's lives if I come along. I can barely control my Vox.
And also, there is this idea that she and Pax are best friends. I don't get it. Like I said, I sat down to have a lot of discussions with these characters in order to maintain my positive run. And the way that these two talk, it's almost like they've just met. You know, like in an RPG when you meet a crew of characters and you get to know them, it's like they've just met. Because they're explaining a lot of things to each other that they should know. Like, these people are not... They call... At the beginning, Sai's card says that she's the BFF. If she's the BFF, and these people are in their 30s, I'm getting back to the 30s thing, and these people are in their 30s, not like young kids or like people who have just met out like at campus, at the university, I would expect them to know a lot about each other. But for some reason, they don't seem to. It's almost like... They wanted them to be best friends right off the bat, but at the same time they talk to each other like they've just met and that we're just getting to know them, which is correct for us, the audience, but shouldn't be correct for the actual characters themselves. I feel like they should have tweaked their dialogue to act to be in such a way that that it reflects that these people know each other much longer than we know them. The other one is Theo. Theo is my guy. I liked him. He was my spirit animal most of the time because his thoughts were my thoughts. He's the more objective person who tries to focus on the mission, because that's what I was trying to do. I didn't want to get into a lot of like impassioned diversions. I wanted to stay on mission, but he's often overruled, unfortunately, because the plot has to happen.
Relax, Theo. It's another hour or two. Find a campsite before sunset and we'll keep our eyes open for riders. It'll be fine.
You know, saying it's fine doesn't automatically make it true. I'd like you to acknowledge the risks we're taking by staying here, but fine. I'll wait.
Fuck Annie. We used to do it all the time.
But he was definitely my favorite of the characters. Ziggy was the character that I would say confused me the most. Because Ziggy is supposed to be 31. Like I said, these characters are supposed to be in their 30s. That thing affects Pax and Ziggy the most because they do not act like people in their 30s. They act like a bunch of teenage like kids, or I feel like the difference in age between these two people, Pax should maybe be 21 and Ziggy should be like 15 or like 16, the way that they act. They are so like emotionally unhinged and they're constantly losing their cool. Ziggy is constantly like pouting and whatnot. The excuse is that she's been living in an isolated, sort of cult-like community, and so she's not experienced the real world. Cult or not, she's not a child. She's someone in her 30s. There is a certain amount of life experience you get, and I know that because I'm in my 30s. There is a certain amount of life experience you get by the time you get to that point that should guarantee that you don't behave a certain way. And these kids, unless you have like serious mental issues, which is what I think these characters are sort of portrayed as, but that's not really compelling for protagonists. Most of the time they're acting very, very strange and in ways that do not reflect their age and life experience. That's my point about them being in their 30s. Now there is a law reason why they make them 30 plus. Apparently there was some kind of broadcast. It's called a broadcast. I'll talk about it from a meta perspective. It's the event that gave them their powers, right? All the people that have powers are supposed to be above the age of 30. This is relevant because when someone else shows up within the story who's not 30 and has powers, it reveals that someone's been trying to recreate these abilities. However, this doesn't work because these characters don't act like they're in their 30s. They are written like YA characters. You know those young adult novels like Hunger Games and Allegiant? They are written like that. But then the age that they give them is way too old for them to be acting like that. So it really doesn't work. Theo is the only one who acts a little bit like how his actual age is specified. He acts like someone who's actually older. And hell, one of his states is called okay dad. Like okay dad and okay boss. It's like, why would people who are this old refer to another person who's also this old as okay dad? Why are you so immature that someone being mature means that they should be called dad?
You think we can trust him?
Theo, he's odd, but good odd. Like a dorky dad. I think he's legit.
I just feel like the ages of these characters are wrong. They should have changed the storyline and removed that 30-year thing. They should have just taken it away and made it like a 10-year thing, such that maybe they're in like their 20s, early 20s at most, or late teens. Then I think this story and all the shenanigans that they get into would work much, much better. I'll put it this way. These characters are a lot less mature than the characters in The Walking Dead, the final season. And those characters are all children. The only difference is that these ones keep saying a bunch of sexual stuff. And so I guess that's what makes them mature. It's a bad writer's interpretation of what maturity means, right? That you have access to sexual things. But the characters are not actually mature in terms of how they, reason things out and make decisions. Other than that, I'd like to now move on to the next point. That was Ziggy and Pax. Do I really want to dissect Pax? No, I'm going to leave Pax out of this because my version of Pax, it was very different from the version that I've seen lots of other people have online. And she ties into my final point. I try to play Pax as someone that's very sensible, very willing to, listen to people and get their perspective on things, like a very nice person. And I will get back to where that ended in my final point. Okay, this video is getting a bit long. I'm going to try and speed things up. My second issue is the combat. The combat in this game is very weak. I chose the option that opts for you to get more combat just because I wanted to sort of stress test the game. I feel like if I chose the option with less combat, it's a bit more difficult to tell. My verdict is that the combat is mindless. There is one ability called Trigger, which augments your ability to do damage. And I just activated that every fight and then just pressed the light attack button, and basically that was it. The game is mostly brain dead. There are abilities you can use. You can upgrade the bat. I don't think it changes anything. Honestly, this combat system is not well thought out. I feel like if they ever get another game, they either need to take this aspect seriously or just drop it next time. The only positive I have around this area is that when you do your upgrades, there is like a little set of lights at the back of Pax's bat that shows, which of the upgrades she's chosen on like a visual display. I think that's cool, but again, that's just a minor thing that is cool to me. It doesn't do anything functional in the actual game. The third and penultimate issue is the dialogue. Specifically, the dialogue in combat, which is why I arranged it like this. These characters, oh my god, they talk about things that absolutely do not make any sense. Most of the game is like if Twitter like came alive and decided to make a game using tweets as the dialogue. That's the best way that I can describe it. It is some of the most obnoxious shit you will ever get. Like, obviously this game is ultra progressive, but holy crap, you have no idea how bad that is until you've actually listened to this dialogue.
Hey, Warbot, what time is it?
The current time is...
No, it's pain o'clock for you, buddy.
That is not a time.
It's my time.
I'm very confused right now.
Mind over matter, bitches.
None of this makes any sense to me.
Destroyed. Afternoon, boys. You ready for this?
I think so. I mean, we're not boys. We're fellows. We're always ready.
Big words from a small boy.
Can you please stop calling us boys? Very insulting.
This is nothing like fighting a bunch of 7-year-olds.
It's sort of the same. What did you call these guys? Zombots?
Zombots. Yeah, like zombie robots. Zombots.
Yeah, I got that, D. It's not that clever.
It's pretty clever, especially since Justice calls their combat robots combots.
Who decided that was a good name? I mean, combots?
You know what? I think it's pretty good. If Justice is good at anything, it's branding.
We make a good team. You're not playing fair with that armor, buddy. Carrying a baseball bat here, not a bazooka.
Should have thought this through before assaulting Justice personnel.
You know that's not what happened. You're gaslighting me. You attacked first.
We're here to enforce the law and protect the Republic.
Just following orders. Am I right, big guy?
Put down your weapon and raise your arm.
And then you shoot me. Yeah, I know how this works. It never ends well for those on the opposite team. Hey, Goliath. Did you hear the one about...
These characters cannot go 5 seconds without saying something that is supposed to indicate basically how progressive they are. They can't go 5 minutes without talking about either a fascist or someone's pronouns. You know, the first time you meet like the robot, as soon as you get to camp, that's the first thing they ask the robot.
I'm a robot. I don't have an assigned gender.
Good for you.
Wait, so how do...
Which is strange because in my experience, that's not how most people talk. They don't just meet you and then just ask you what your pronouns are, like right out of the gate. That's very strange behavior, at least to me anyway. At some point, Sai goes ahead and asks if the meat she's about to eat is haram. And that makes no sense because she's already cooking it on the fire at the point at which she asks the question. It's like the writers just felt the need to mention something culturally or religiously interesting, but didn't think about where they are putting it. It's like every piece of dialogue is meant to show how like culturally diverse or something these characters are. It is obnoxious. I'm telling you, it's like walking around playing a game where Twitter is just making constant tweets at you while you're trying to play. It is annoying as hell. And it is really, I think, one of the most, if it wasn't for the final thing I'm going to mention, this would have been what like takes me out of the experience. This constant non-stop barrage of this inane dialogue. I think this one is so bad that even the developers know that it's bad. Why do I say that? Because they even have an option in the menu for you to turn it off. That's how you know that. That's how you know that even they realize this is bad. The same way that in Forspoken, you have the ability to turn down the amount of dialogue between Calf and Frey. And even in, what was that game by the guys who made Rick and Morty? The one about the talking guns. High on Life, right? Even that game had an ability for you to turn down the dialogue of the talking guns. Once you see that kind of thing, you know that they tested it and even they realize, holy crap, this is bad. We better actually put an option for the players to be able to turn this shit off. Otherwise, this is a real deal breaker. This dialogue is bad. Now, That would have been enough, but I was able to power through that. And I didn't turn the dialogue off, no. I was able to power through it, mostly because, like I mentioned, the fights were over in seconds. So I didn't have to deal with that very much. The final thing, and the one that made me quit, it was the illusion of choice. I had a specific way I wanted to play this game. I did not want to make Pax rely on her powers. That was my way of playing. I wanted to mostly use words because, to me, what I understood and interpreted from most of the early sections of this game is that Pax's powers are bad. I think most people will agree that her powers are not heroic. They're pretty evil. She has the ability to create negative effects on people, bullying them, hoaxing them, triggering, all that stuff. And so I chose to basically not engage these abilities. Just do not engage them. But at certain points, you're forced to. The game forces you to engage them. Usually, it's when you've just gotten a new ability and the game sort of wants to show you how it works. So it forces you to use it. And I was like, okay, fair enough. They want to teach me how the thing works. But the problem is, I was able to get actually to a certain point while avoiding all conflicts, right? I avoided, for the most part, every conflict that I could. And then you get to a certain point, and then you can't make a choice, especially one where they force you to sort of Hawks Theo. Was it Hawks or was it normalize? One of those powers, you have to use them on Theo in order to convince him to open a certain package that you shouldn't open. I really did not want to do that. I was hoping there is a version where you don't do that, but you don't have a choice. You have to do it. The game doesn't give you an option. So when you do it, you get attacked by a faction called the Puritans. They're like these sci-fi weird looking freaks. And once that happens, and my God, that scene was terrible. They did something they think is funny, like that scene in The Last Jedi where the commander is talking and then like their like speaker is the speaker is kind of like failing and they're trying to get their threatening line across, but the communication is breaking and so it can't get through properly. It is so unfunny. It is so awkward. And anyway, after that entire combat encounter, which you couldn't avoid because you have to go ahead and open the package, the team was able to get out of that unscathed. Luckily, the game doesn't usually punish you for those moments you can't ignore. You then get onto a bus and you cross to this snowy area, right? And as soon as you get into that area like this, suddenly the game forces you to stop and go in and save another abnormal. That's what they call the people with powers. I was so pissed by this. I think it's because I had been like containing a lot of rage at that point with the game. I wanted to refuse the team to go in. Theo says they should not go in, and everybody else insists that they should go in. And of course, Theo is my guy, so I want to side with Theo. I'm waiting for an option that allows me not to go in. There is no option. And I'm like, okay, this is getting annoying to me. Why is there a dialogue box if there is no option? If there is no option, then you should stop wasting. Don't make me choose an option if there isn't one. If there isn't an option, just let it play out like a cinematic or a cutscene and just let the characters move on. Don't waste my time. They do this a lot where they give you like an option to pick something when nothing that you're doing is going to change the outcome. So you're just wasting my time. Man, I really, really, really hate that kind of stuff. If there isn't an option, just let me move on. Anyway, that's just a personal pet peeve, and for me that was the last straw. At that point, I turned off the game. I said, thanks for wasting my time. That's enough. So no, unfortunately I failed to find the value here. I could not get to the end. The game cannot rise above itself. That's essentially where as far as I was able to get to. Metaphor was coming out and a bunch of other good stuff. So the experiment was over and I had to move on. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching or listening. And I guess that's the video for today.